Hello everybody, it is I, Serbidian, welcoming you once more back to the Hype Train. No, I have decided we are not going to be talking about ground forces anymore, at least not anytime soon. I'm sick and tired of it. Let's move on. So, in C#, standing orders for unloading colonists, which is what shipping lines, NPRs, and your own ships can use, has been rewritten. The process is now as follows. Step 1. The colony fleet looks for a suitable population that is set as a destination with no other colony fleets inbound, checking its current system first and then using the pathfinding algorithm to search everywhere else in the Empire. Step 2. Same as 1, but without the check for inbound colony ships. When determining if a population is a suitable destination, the fleet checks the following. How many colonists it is carrying, if the species is the same as the colonists, the available capacity of the system body on which the population is situated, taking into account other populations, the available capacity of the infrastructure, normal or low gravity, depending on gravity, taking into account the current population size, the lesser of 2 and 3, I think that's meant to be 3 and 4, to be honest, because number 2 is just a species and it's not really a lesser, is used as a base capacity of the population to accept new colonists. The available space in orbital habitats is added to that capacity. The total number of colonists on ships already inbound to the colony is deducted from that capacity, and if the capacity exceeds the number of colonists in the checking fleet and the species match, the colony is suitable. This should prevent the current problem of many colony ships delivering to a colony without the capacity to support them all. As soon as the fleet determines a colony is suitable, the orders are issued, which means other fleets checking in the same increment will be aware of the extra inbound colonists. Because of these changes, passenger liners will no longer search their current system for potential destination. Otherwise, they could load and unload at the same population. So, two very, very important takeaways here. Number 1, you're not going to run into the situation where you're going to get 1 million people dumped on a rock that can only support 100,000. And which means that overall growth rate should rise now that people are dying on a barren rock. Number 2, we're not going to be able to have passenger liners shipping within the same system, which means we're not going to be able to rely on civilian shipping to transport and populate, say, the moon, which I'm a little bit weird about. I don't know why this particular situation, shouldn't there just be a check, an added check, is the colony where the last place where you loaded the colonists? I feel like a much simpler solution to avoid loading and unloading at the same population would just be to note down where the colonists were loaded from and then just exclude that location from the destination. Yeah. Because so many people spent time building up colonies within Sol, and if you can't rely on the civilians to do that, you're going to have to do that with your own shipping. So, yeah. Anyway, speaking of shipping lines, a shipping line will start building freighters and colony ships when the parent race has 2 colonies, including the capital, with populations greater than 0. A shipping line will start building passengers liners when the parent race has 2 colonies with populations greater than 0 in 2 different systems. A shipping line will start building harvesters when the parent race has 2 colonies with populations greater than 0 and there is Saurian present and any gas giant or super Jovian in a system with a parent race population of at least 10 million. The number of civilian freighters and colony ships will be kept relatively even, and creation of new shipping lines will only be possible once the starting shipping lines has created its first ship. So, this is good. First things first, you're not going to get passenger liners being built in the first place until you have the populations in 2 different systems for them to actually do anything. You're not going to get the VB6 situation where civilians build ships that just sit idle because there's literally no work for them. Now, one little side effect is if it keeps the number of civilian freighters and colony ships relatively even, that means you're going to get a massive boom of colony ships as soon as you set up a colony in a different system. So, also, players are going to eventually end up with a very reasonable fleet of state-owned passenger liners because they're going to need to use them to colonize Sol and to set up the initial population in the first place. Moving right along, we have an old 7.2 change. The chance of alien ruins is added to the game window, so it can be adjusted. It is normally 20% for any terrestrial world, terrestrial moon, or small terrestrial moon with gravity greater than 0.4 Gs, and temperature between 200 and 360 Kelvin. Another 7.2 change, structural shells. A no armor checkbox has been added to the class window. Clicking this removes the normal armor from the class. Designs with no armor instead have a new type of armor called structural shell. This costs 1 per unit and has a strength of 20, essentially making it cost 5% the normal armor in terms of strength. There are severe limitations on ships with no armor. Number 1, they cannot have engines, they cannot have military systems, and the structural shell does not prevent damage. In effect, weapon fire passes straight through the armor. This type of ship is ideally suited for orbital habitats or space stations of some type, such as fuel harvesting platforms, mining stations, etc., that require towing to move. Another 7.2 change, C# Aurora maintenance storage bays are no longer a military system, which is great because now it means that we can have civilian maintenance ships running around and supplying our civilian maintenance bases. Another 7.2 change for orbital habitats. The population capacity of orbital habitat modules has been increased from 50,000 to 200,000. You will also find this in my mod for VB6. In combination with the new no armor option, this significantly reduces the cost of building orbital habitats. For example, the habitats shown here supports a population of 1 million for a cost of 1,145 build points. To support 1 million colonists with infrastructure on a colony cost 2.0 world with acceptable gravity would cost 400 build points. So the colony cost would have to be approaching 6 before the orbital habitat became cheaper. Although it is probably practical to lower colony costs because the ground-based infrastructure will require a larger proportion of population for environment. For low-gravity worlds, it is comparable with the cost of low-gravity infrastructure, and it is the only option for high-gravity worlds or small bodies with low population capacities. Sticking to the theme, the rules on construction factories building spacecraft are changing in C#. Any class with a structural shell instead of armor is classed as a space station. Space stations can be built by construction factories at any population that includes a spaceport. Note this means you no longer need an orbital habitat in order to use construction factories, which is awesome! Which means that you can create huge deep space logistical bases, terraforming stations, or small observation platforms, or anything in between using construction factories. The downside to this flexibility is no armor, no engines, and no military systems. So space stations will require protection from defensive bases, which can be maintained by the space station if it has sufficient maintenance facilities. As an example, if you were channeling Starship Troopers, the movie, not the book, you could build the following station and deploy it in deep space near the Arachnid Quarantine Zone. Standing orders are the C# equivalent of default orders in VB6 and function in exactly the same way. If your ship has no active movement orders, it will act on the primary standing order. If that is not possible, it will act on the secondary standing order. Standing orders will only be checked if the incremental length is greater than 1 hour. In addition, acting on the standing orders for move to gas giant with Saurium and move to asteroid mineral source will unset the standing order just to prevent continuing issuing of the same order. Civilians and NPRs will monitor ships in this situation and reactivate the standing order if required. Conditional orders are standing orders linked with a condition. When a condition is met, the associated conditional order will be executed where possible. Secondary conditional orders will not be executed if the fleet is already acting on the primary conditional order. This is nice because there is a very common issue where when a ship has 2 conditional orders, and the first one is invalid, it'll basically spam that message to tell you that, oh hey, I can't do my conditional, I'm doing my second one. I don't give a shit, just do your goddamn job. So now they will. Each potential order is accompanied by an S or an A. This indicates whether the order will look for potential destinations in the same system or all systems. When the order involves moving to a different system, the algorithm calculating the best path will take into account whether the fleet will try to avoid danger or try to avoid alien systems. These 2 values are set by the check danger rating and exclude alien controlled checkboxes respectively, which are located in the movement orders tab. There will be some new standing orders in C#. Number 1, land on assigned mothership can be used for standing or conditional orders and will only be executed if there is a common mothership for the fleet. An example of use would be survey carrier ops, where the parasites would return to the mothership if they were low on fuel or had surveyed all potential destinations. Corollary, it seems to be that no survey is a condition, which is cool. Move to system requiring geosurvey can be used for standing orders. The fleet will move to a system where the standing order geosurvey complete flag is not set. This flag is set when a survey ship with an order of survey nearest body or survey next 5 system bodies cannot find a system body within 10 billion kilometers. It doesn't mean the system is completely surveyed, but that it is surveyed in practical terms. If you need to, you can send a survey ship to a distant planet or star, more than 10 billion kilometers, and it will automatically survey everything within 10 billion kilometers of the last surveyed body. But the earlier setting of the flag means that other survey ships will not arrive automatically to survey the very distant bodies. Cool. Move to system requiring geosurvey, same as above, but for survey locations. Refuel at hub. This is part of several different orders. A refueling hub is a large module intended for space stations, or that can be used on ships, which can simultaneously refuel an unlimited number of ships. We already covered that, if it is stationary. Move to closest rendezvous point. A new type of waypoint, which we will cover shortly, is a rendezvous point. This can be assigned as a destination for a standing order or conditional order. Investigate closest point of interest. A new type of waypoint is the point of interest, which is a temporary waypoint that remains in place until a fleet arrives at the location, or for 6 months, whichever happens first. The function of this order and the new waypoint is for the player to designate areas in a system which he wishes a fleet to visit automatically. Different fleets operating with the investigate closest point of interest order will take into account of each other's activity to avoid duplication of destination. Points of interest can be designated as urgent, and these will take priority over other POIs. So I'm very much liking this overhaul of default orders. I personally feel that default orders in VB6 are very minimal in benefit. Like there's a few of them that are pretty good, like the survey nearest bodies and stuff like that. But for the most part, a good chunk of them are pretty much useless. So this change will be really good, especially if we have the possibility to potentially expand on this further on down the road with some suggestions to Steve that he's willing to implement. And since we're on the subject, waypoints will be much more useful in C# Aurora. It will be possible to add the following 5 types to the system map. First up, the normal, standard waypoint from VB6. This will appear on the map as waypoint 1, waypoint 2, etc. with a number unique to the system. A normal waypoint will remain until manually removed and can be assigned as a destination in movement orders. A named waypoint functions as a normal waypoint with the exception that during placement you can assign a name to the waypoint that will be displayed instead of the normal text. So you don't have to rename it afterwards. Rendezvous waypoint functions as a normal waypoint and will also be used as a target for the new standing conditional order move to closest rendezvous point. Point of interest waypoint is a temporary waypoint that will remain in place until a fleet arrives at the location or for 6 months, whichever happens first. We kind of already covered this just earlier. Urgent point of interest is the same but has a higher priority. And it extends the delay to 1 year instead of 6 months. Clicking on a system body icon while placing a waypoint of any kind will link the waypoints to the system body and it will move with that system body. I think this function is actually in VB6 already, which is pretty cool. Okay, and that is it for today. Join me tomorrow where I will continue covering the regular changes for C# Aurora every day this month until launch. Down below, links to the official Aurora Discord, Reddit, and forums where you can join the discussion and the hype. And I will see you next time.